we had known that Michigan had shut down football facilities earlier this week. It has just been announced that the Maryland game has been canceled for Michigan. Okay, how does that affect Ohio State? Well, obviously, we know what the quarantine rules are of 21 days. That doesn't necessarily mean that a team can't play for 21 days, but those specific players are quarantined for 21 days. We don't know how many players or personnel this affects per team. But Ohio State's game versus Michigan State still on, correct?
Yeah, that's the time we're recording this. Yeah.
So at 2 o'clock Eastern time on Wednesday, Ohio State, Michigan State still on from East Lansing at noon on Saturday. But we'll start with you, Steve, in regards to what you think the dominoes that could fall going forward, because, of course, Michigan's very much in jeopardy, whether the Big Ten would make the call that the game cannot be played next week, or that the University of Michigan, that's always an option, as Ohio State took that option last week, and Wisconsin has a few times this year to not play the game.
Yeah, it's kind of a state of flux right now, and obviously everybody's making a big deal about the fact Ohio State has to have 6 games to qualify for the Big Ten championship, which would then be a 7th game. And then there's also consideration that if Ohio State doesn't have as many as 7 games, then how can the Buckeyes qualify for the college football playoff? We're already getting some, people who are questioning Ohio State's legitimacy for that, even though we knew in mid-September when they announced that this was going to be the plan. I thought we had everybody on the same page that the exact number of games played didn't matter. We just wanted to measure the relative strength of the teams. But now here we are in early December, and people want to use that against certain schools and certain leagues and whatever. Everybody's got their own bias, Desmond Howard, that they're coming at this. So at any rate, my feeling is Ohio State is doing everything it can, moving heaven and earth, to play this week at Michigan State. Again, they keep all of their testing data in-house, do not share it publicly, but it sounds like they had a good enough number of negative tests, and in some reports, very few, all the way down to 0, potentially, when they got back in Sunday, Monday, that they were able to have some kind of modicum of practice on Tuesday, may practice today, and may practice Thursday. But again, we're kind of on a media lockdown right now because Ryan Day is in quarantine with the virus for 10 days. And Larry Johnson is the acting head coach, has not been made available. Gene Smith hasn't spoken since Saturday when this all came out. So, we're kind of in a holding pattern, I guess, to know exactly to what degree Ohio State is practicing and where things entirely stand. But it looks like a good sign that they're going to play at Michigan State. Now comes the news today that this week's game with Michigan and Maryland is canceled, and Michigan has to pause all activities until at least Monday, which would be the Monday before the Ohio State-Michigan game. And you just wonder, Kirk Herbstreit put them on blast last night on national television, basically saying that it would not surprise him, or he fully expects Michigan to dodge Ohio State in another painful loss. And the college coaches that he talks to are fully recognizing and saying to him, Dabo Swinney, about the Florida State situation in particular, and some others that have come up, that teams are ducking sure losses by, holding up the V card for virus and saying either you've got it and we don't want it, or we've got it and you don't want it, and we're not going to play this game. And he thinks that's what Michigan's going to do next week. But the interesting thing is the Big Ten is now allowing teams, if there are multiple cancellations, teams not affected by the virus can play one another. So whoever Minnesota is supposed to play next week, which I don't have the schedule, the 14th iteration of the schedule is not in front of me, unfortunately. Whoever they're supposed to play, usually they play Wisconsin the last week, but that must not be it. I don't, maybe they already played them. Hell, I don't think they already played them, or they were supposed to play them, or who the hell knows. But at any rate, Ohio State could have another opponent for next week, even if it's a repeat opponent. just to get the 6 games so they can qualify for the Big Ten championship, and also edify the Desmond Howards of the world, who are probably who and Reese Davises and everybody who, 7 games isn't very many, but it's certainly better than 6. So, get out of here with all that is my feeling. And so there's my 2 cents on where we're at. I'm optimistic that they will play Michigan State. And even if Michigan can't go next week, I would be optimistic that Minnesota is laying out one more week. I mean, they've basically given up on the season. No reason for them to come back and play next week either, that there'd be an opponent, Nebraska or whoever it may be next week for Ohio State to play.
Yeah, Minnesota is scheduled to play Nebraska. That game is at Nebraska. I don't feel like going to Nebraska in December. That's just my personal opinion. And if the ACC does everything they can for Clemson and Notre Dame, why not make Nebraska come to Columbus once again and see how things go? But if Ohio State plays this week, they will be the first Big Ten team to cancel a game and then play the next week, because they really, really want to play. Everybody else who has canceled the game, I don't know that they really, really wanted to play as quickly as Ohio State did. Even Wisconsin, when before the season, wanted an extra week to get ready, and you wonder about their desire to play. And so I think that's one of the big differences of Ohio State and everybody else, is just like they're playing for something, and so they are willing to not just keep things shut down. Where I think everybody at one point or another within the last month has said that Michigan is going to do this, jokingly, half jokingly, in terms of like backing out of the game so that they don't have to deal with it. I still hope, obviously, that it doesn't happen. It's my favorite thing in sports. It's the best rivalry going, even though you could say it's a little one-sided right now. But it would be a sad capper on a very difficult season if we don't at least get that game. That being said, I could totally understand why nobody at Michigan would want any part of it. But also, they may never get a more I don't want to say a more weakened Ohio State team than the one they would face this season, because Ohio State had to shut things down. So they're missing people. And this would be Michigan's perhaps best chance to go ahead and beat them. But then again, Michigan may also be missing people as well. And if you're missing the right people or I guess the wrong people, then your chances go way down. But yeah, I'm obviously hoping that the reports, and it was Michigan's rival site, I saw the 11 Warriors is reporting it. They're just repeating what somebody else is reporting, that game is in jeopardy. And would anybody here be surprised if that happens? No.
I'm calling for an apology out of you, Gerd. You cannot be saying any of that stuff about Michigan and malfeasance and trying to game the system or anything like that. We do know that the Michigan-Maryland game is kaput. It's not happening. So it kicks the can down the road. Ohio State not necessarily out of the woods yet. I was sitting in Champaign, Illinois when the call came to cancel the Illinois game. So, yeah, I know about that. But, things seem to be trending in the right direction for Ohio State at this point. We still don't know necessarily what the roster is going to look like. There's been a lot of whispering and whatnot, but I'm not going to be the guy that's going to throw out, speculative things in terms of that. I mean, this isn't talking about somebody with turf toe or a stinger or something like that. This is something a little bit more serious, regardless of what your belief on COVID is. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Let's say Ohio State does play, Michigan State does get by. Ohio State's sitting with 5 games, then we're at 6. And if Michigan isn't able to go for one reason or another, is it just so much of a matter of, I really believe Minnesota's done for the year. Not only do they have an outbreak, they have a huge outbreak at this point. So Minnesota's opponent becomes open. But could you see a shuffling around and maybe Ohio State is able to play Maryland, a team that it was supposed to play earlier? The Terps shut down their program for a bit when they had their own COVID scare. That game didn't end up happening. That game probably in the grand scheme of things might even mean a little bit more in terms of FPI and all these other made up metrics and all of that stuff. But I'm with probably everybody else who's watching this show. I certainly want to see Ohio State and Michigan happen, but I'm not exactly optimistic that it's going to happen. And I agree with what Tony said, that if Michigan could get to the point of playing the game, this might be their best chance of stealing one, because we just don't know what Ohio State's roster is going to look like. And quite honestly, we'll probably get the status report 10 minutes after the team takes the field in East Lansing for warm-ups, and we could kind of figure it out ourselves. Yeah,
I was told we would, in theory, get the availability report 10 a.m. on Saturday. So like Kevin's saying, this is we either get the report and they're already on the field, or they're already on the field and then they release the report, because you can't hide it forever. And then if there is no report, you're just process of elimination. That person's not here. That person's not here. I'm just going to assume they have COVID. And I guess one way to maybe avoid that is just give us who's out, because that's all the availability report is. It just tells you who's not playing and who is a game day decision. Doesn't tell you what they're out for. Doesn't tell you what their ailment or whatever. You can only hide this for a couple of more days, and then reality sinks in. And for me, that's one of the things that I think maybe fans are forgetting, is that, yes, looks like football is happening. We got it back. And then it's not a be careful what you wish for. It's just well, now here's the reality of the situation. Here's the football team on the field. How do you feel about it now? And just depending on who, in fact, is out there.
For a series that is more historic and legendary than any in sports, in my opinion, and I'm biased, yes, that has the 1973 vote that sent Ohio State to the Rose Bowl, that has Woody going for 2 in a 50-14 game, that has David Boston versus Charles Woodson, that has all these storylines and pinnacle moments and turning points within the series. The guy who has his part of it, meaning Jim Harbaugh, as both a player on the good side and the coach on the bad side, who once guaranteed a win and came through, to the angst of Ohio State fans, if he's a true competitor and for whatever say-so he has in it, I would rather be the guy as a Michigan head coach to fall to 0-6 and go out there and lose 52-10 and say at least we competed, than be the guy that, even though it was under the guise of health and safety concerns, everyone knew we didn't want to play. We didn't want to get our butts kicked. We didn't want to show up and be embarrassed.